I am John Cardillo. You are back with the John Cardillo Show. If you want to give us a call, it's 561-844-WJNO. That's 561-844-9566, 1290 WJNO, the Palm Beaches. So, we've got Hillary Clinton, who I think is an incredibly flawed candidate to begin with. And now we're seeing, the New York Post is reporting that the probe of her emails is criminal. So let's back up a little bit and talk about Hillary. We've got a candidate whose husband had scandal upon scandal. We've got a candidate who left 4 Americans to die in Benghazi, who we now know called off multiple special operations units who wanted to respond. This is the key. These were guys who were rushing to put themselves in harm's way, to run to the sound of gunfire, and they were told, stand down. Stand down. And all roads lead to Hillary Clinton State Department. All stand down roads lead to Hillary Clinton State Department. But what does this mean? What is this investigation about? Joining me now is a guy you're going to hear from quite a bit on this show. Hemanshu Hemu Nigam is a former federal prosecutor. He's actually one of the first cybercrime prosecutors in the Department of Justice. He's also the former chief security officer of NewsCorp, the parent company of Fox, which is where we met about 10 years ago when he was my client, and currently is the CEO of SSP Blue, a leading cybersecurity consulting company. Hemu, how are you?
Hey, John, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I know you're busy. So walk us through this. For those listening who have not been in law enforcement, who have not been prosecutors, what is the FBI doing right now? What does a criminal investigation of Hillary's emails mean?
Well, there's quite a few things that happen when the FBI gets involved, but most of it is to figure out what actually happened. In other words, there's 2 avenues you can take here. One is, are you accusing the secretary of destroying evidence or somebody on her staff? And if that's the case, then can that be proven? In other words, was there emails that suddenly disappeared, or there server access that got wiped out? Was there some direction coming from the secretary saying, let's not give these and in fact hide them, or what they call obstruction of justice? We hear that term all the time. So that's one. The other is to simply figure out what is going on. Right now, if you look through every single news article out there, what you see is, well, it could be this, it could be that, it may have information, she may have been using it, maybe she wasn't, and the latest is that's the only thing she was exclusively using to communicate across not just her own agency, but across multiple agencies. I mean, this is a person who sat in the president's cabinet.
Yeah, now, you know, Democrats accuse conservatives, they accuse guys like me, former law enforcement guys, of being reactionary, of blowing this out of proportion. Are we? I mean, how bad is this? Are we being reactionarily conspiratorial, or is using a private server for these types of emails for somebody holding the position of Secretary of State that bad?
Well, let me make this, actually, John, and I know this is not kind of your take on things, but let me make it completely non-political. Just from a security, purely online security perspective, if you are using government systems, they're obviously going to be more secure, especially if you're the secretary, more secure than your own personal home system, number one. Number two, hackers are smart enough to know that if there is an individual who has a weaker security system at home and they're connecting in any way to a government system, that's a perfect back road into the government systems. Number three, the information, even if you say it's not classified, and I cannot imagine a logical person ever saying that what she did had no classified information, because that was one of her things, is to deal with that. She is the decision maker. So number three, they're getting access, if somebody comes in, to classified as well as non-classified information.
So in lay terms, how bad was it?
Well, in lay terms, you gotta be freaking kidding me to be using your personal system in a position as secretary. I don't know if that's lay term or slang term, whatever you want to call it, but it is what it is.
You were finishing a thought. I cut you off.
Yeah. So even if you are intruded upon in your personal system, you don't have all the bells and whistles the government might have to say, well, you know, a trigger went off, something anomalous is happening, or Looks like data moved around. We're not quite sure what's going on. They have people watching 24/7. And even then, the Russians or the Chinese or whoever it might be still get into government systems. And we're talking about a home system which would have a tenth, if not even less than that, of amount of security around it than a government system would.
I'm speaking with Hemanshu Nigam, former federal cybercrime prosecutor and currently CEO of SSP Blue, a leading cybersecurity company. Hemu, that was a great place to go. Let's talk about this Russian hack of the Pentagon. So tell me a little bit about this. Pentagon, through the administration, is doing what they often do, downplaying this, saying non-classified emails were hacked on a server. Tell me a little bit about this hack. Was it Russia? Was spear phishing involved? Why don't you walk us through that one?
So in this particular one, right now the current, at least sources inside the Pentagon are saying it looks like something from Russia. At the end of the day, I think no matter where we're coming from, what approach we're taking on this, when a hack happens, hackers love to jump from country to country to country, and they love to lay blame on somebody. So most of the time you actually don't know whether it's Russia or China or some other country that may be an enemy foreign nation state. You never really know, so you try to define it based on what they were looking for and things like that. In this particular case, the email servers that were attacked actually supplied emails to 4,000 government, civilian, and military personnel. They weren't classified, but the fact of the matter is the communications that happen on a daily basis inside the Pentagon, working through the Joint Chiefs of Staff, talks about a lot of things, everything from budget to where the resources are going to go, what projects they're working on, what future projects might be coming, just that day-to-day operation of the government.
Yeah, and you make a good point with that. So what you're saying is that if somebody took all of this non-classified information and pieced it together, it might not be too difficult to draw conclusions on things that might otherwise be classified.
Well, you can build what I would call profiles of which way is the government headed. Are there going to be more resources on Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan and some other part of the world that we're not quite aware of as an enemy nation state? I mean, I think one of the parts of the reason why you would downplay this is every government, especially every advanced government, is engaging in, people say there's no more Cold War. I say there's a digital Cold War. And we're top, front, center engaging in digital Cold War. And what happens is if you say, well, this is what's going on, and you tell the world that you want somebody to do something about it, then in essence, you can be outed just the same. So it's easy to say, you know what, let's just do a gentleman's agreement here. We're hacking, you're hacking. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes we succeed. But if we make too much stink out of it, then the unfortunate part is going to be all of this becomes much more public, and the fact that the government systems are not as secure as they ought to be also becomes much more public.
Now, before we run out of time, I have just two more quick questions for you. You raise interesting points with the Pentagon. They were alerted. Pentagon has a sophisticated alert system to let them know they'd been hacked, I would guess. But did Hillary have that on her home server? Would she have have been known if she was hacked?
I doubt it. I doubt she had the kind of security systems that the Pentagon would have. And if she did, there was something. I mean, to me, just simply even logging in from your home network that's not secure into a government network creates all sorts of access points for any government system. So it should be just why would you ever do that? Every one of us, I had top secret clearance myself, and I'm sure her secret clearance level was far beyond mine. But when we sat in that vaulted room where nobody could hear us and went through training, the amount of times we were told, do not use it for personal things when you're talking about government communications. Just don't do it. It was that simple rule of, you have the Nike just do it. This was that just don't do it rule.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. Now, real quick, I want to ask you about, do you feel there's a connection? So we know that Iran violated the travel ban on the Iran deal. Soleimani, head of their Quds force, their special operations elite force, traveled to Russia, met with Putin. Shortly thereafter, the Pentagon is hacked. We know Iran has been a major state sponsor of hacks. In 15 seconds, do you think those two events worked hand in hand? Do you think Soleimani visiting Putin had something to do with this hack?
I think we have to stop thinking about things that are happening and being disclosed as a series of unfortunate events and coincidences, and start focusing on the fact that there are political activities going on designed specifically to make the United States either look weak or bad or in some way change the agenda.
Hemu, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being here. It's going to be the first of many appearances.
Thanks, John.
You got it. So media bias against cops. Why are the murders of police officers being underreported?